Hey, it's Russ from the Infectious Groove Podcast and Vinyl Channel. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to do an album spotlight today, and something I kind of want to work in now and again is in defense of. And today I'm going to speak in defense of Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. Not only do I love them, but I definitely think they warrant being over 2 CDs and or 4 LPs. We'll get into it coming right up. So here they are, the beast of a real follow-up to Guns N' Roses' 1987 debut, Appetite for Destruction, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. Now, yes, they did have GNR Lies come out in between the two releases, but GNR Lies is a acoustic EP coupled with a live album that came out prior to Appetite for Destruction, so it's definitely not a full album release. This really was the official follow-up to Appetite for Destruction. Over the course of the time that these records have been out, I've heard a lot of derogatory terms being used. Bloated, overblown, overproduced, just too much, and little did we know that years later we would be wondering, if we're ever going to get more GNR material, and how great it was to get that much GNR material all at once. From the time that these records came out, I have always been a huge fan of what GNR did here. One word I think that can encapsulate the negatives that you hear on these albums, overblown, overproduced, too grand or whatnot, is ambitious. I think these records are insanely ambitious. They yielded a great amount of singles that were always in the top 10. Then, of course, you have the MTV impact with the crazy videos that were made for some of these. November Rain is still one of the most known music videos of all time. It's up there. It gets in the discussion with videos like Thriller as far as how well it's known for putting a band on the map and what it did to help promote the album. But the biggest thing that I always hear, and this is where I'm going to really get into the defense, is people always say, oh, but it should have definitely been one album. There really wasn't enough there to make a 2 CD set, 4 LP set. And I completely disagree. Now, some of this does come down to track list running times, but we'll get into that a little bit. As far as Use Your Illusion 1 goes, it is the longer track listing of the 2 LPs. Of the 2 records and 4 LPs. The Use Your Illusion 1 is 16 tracks long. Now, for me personally, there are very, very few tracks on Use Your Illusion 1 that you could even put in the discussion of something that you could leave off of the album. For me personally, I think at the very most off of Use Your Illusion 1, just looking at the track listing again now, you could make an argument to get rid of the song Back Off Bitch, which was actually meant to be on Appetite for Destruction. It was recorded long before the Use Your Illusion set. So I could see, out of the 16 songs, I could see maybe getting rid of that, but I know that it's still a favorite among a lot of GNR fans. So even with that, you would be still in the 15 track range for this one LP. And then you've got very, very long songs like the album closer Coma, which I think is one of the most underrated GNR tracks that there is. And of course the aforementioned November Rain, which is a huge ballad and needs to be on there and would elongate that runtime. Personally, I find the last run of Use Your Illusion 1 to be probably the most underrated run in GNR's catalog. Now, if you're listening to it on LP, it's the last 3 songs, but if you're listening to it on CD or streaming, I would group in the last 4 songs. I think Don't Damn Me, Bad Apples, Dead Horse, and Coma are an amazing run of really good hard rock songs from GNR that are of a quality that nobody else was putting out around that time and really hasn't since then. So as far as Use Your Illusion 1 goes, there's only the one track that I personally could even think to dump off of it. Now, Use Your Illusion 2. What's interesting about Use Your Illusion 2 is, at least for me personally, there are more tracks that I would cut off of this particular track listing, but this tends to be the more favorite of the 2 records between the 2 as far as the casual fans go of GNR. I want to say that's probably because of tracks like Civil War and Knocking on Heaven's Door being on here. Me personally, there's more than a few tracks I could cut off of this one. Get in the Ring, I don't believe has aged well. It really wasn't that good of a song to begin with. And then the lyrics of Axl basically throwing a childish fit about the press. And I get his overall point that the press was not treating the band well and inherently not treating the fans well. I understand that point, but it really wasn't handled well at the time, and definitely hasn't aged well. Shotgun Blues, I personally think the track that follows, Get in the Ring, I think is one of the worst songs GNR has ever recorded. Easily could come off the record, in my opinion. But then you take an upswing into 3 tracks in a row that, again, approach that Coma area for me of underrated songs that are fantastic GNR cuts that most casual fans haven't heard. And if you were to just look at the track listing, you might say, oh, well, we could cut those easily. But when you really dig into the songs, I just don't see how it could be done. Those being Breakdown, Pretty Tied Up, and Locomotive. Breakdown was probably the last song on this album where I really, really got it and started to love it. So I could see it being pretty inaccessible. It's almost got a country vibe to it at the very beginning, and then kicks into a mid-tempo rock song with a lot of rambling lyrics, but when you really listen to them, Axl is saying quite a lot in the song that is quite a bit deeper than I think most people would expect. Pretty Tied Up is a great Izzy Stradlin track along the lines of an It's So Easy type track. So if you like It's So Easy on Appetite for Destruction and you haven't really listened to Pretty Tied Up from Use Your Illusion 2, you might want to dig into that. Locomotive kind of is the crowning jewel of those 3. In my opinion, Locomotive is a beast of a Guns N' Roses song. Really up there with Coma, except it doesn't have any lulls or slow points in it like Coma does, where there's a few parts in the song Coma where it really stops and takes a pause before it kicks back in. Locomotive is aptly titled. It is exactly just a running freight train through the entire song. Really great cut, and it's a very, very long, expansive track. The only other thing that most people, when they look at the track listing, instantly say that could be cut from these 2 albums is that there's a version of Don't Cry on Use Your Illusion 1, and there's a version of Don't Cry on Use Your Illusion 2, so you could maybe get rid of one or the other. Most people are very familiar with the version on 1 because that's the one you hear on the radio most of the time. I personally really like the lyrics of the version that's on Use Your Illusion 2. Exact same backing track. It's just that the version from Use Your Illusion 1 had been written years ago, again, could have been on Appetite for Destruction, and they had been singing the same lyrics to it for years and years and years. So prior to the recording of Use Your Illusion, Axl went in and rewrote some of the lyrics, and in my opinion, they're massively improved, especially the bridge part on. So if you're going to cut a version of Don't Cry, I think that you would get rid of the one on Use Your Illusion 1 and keep the one on 2. But I personally like having both songs because you do get to see in the lyrics the different time spans that they were recorded and what would have been on Axl and Izzy's minds as songwriters at the time that they were recorded. The last track on Use Your Illusion 2 definitely can go. I honestly can't think of anybody who can defend this track. This is a song called My World. I use the term song loosely. It's more of an electronica type experiment. To give you an idea of how unwelcome this track is on this album, it's been widely reported that various members of the band didn't even know that this track was going to be on the album prior to the album's release. And it is very much a creation by Axl. And although I'm a huge Axl fan, and a huge Chinese Democracy fan, My World does not do anything for me. I'm glad that he started to experiment and it ended up in a lot of the great electronic sounds that are on Chinese Democracy, but this here is no good and it doesn't go with the album itself. Having said all of that, here's the problem. Because so many of the great songs on these 2 albums are so long and well worth it, in my opinion, Coma, Locomotive, Estranged. I didn't even mention what a massive, awesome track Estranged is that's on Use Your Illusion 2. Because of November Rain, because of the long runtime of the tracks, there's really no way to whittle this record down to one 74-minute disc or one 80-minute CD and really keep the best tracks, in my opinion. And even at that point, it still would have been a double LP set. But when most people say single album, they think CD release. So when I say single album, I'm going by the 74-minute or 80-minute moniker. That is my defense. I personally, not only do I think Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 needs to be a double album / 4 LP set, but I'm quite thankful that it is. What are some of your favorites on the record, or am I insane? And a lot of the ones that I mentioned as great tracks, could you cut easily? Make sure to hit the like button on the video if you like it. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel if you're not. And most importantly, get involved in the discussion. Leave a comment below about what you think about these records, and let's duke it out. Thanks for watching.